Okay, welcome to Midjourney's Prompting for Beginners. So glad you could join us today. We'll get started in just a few minutes. Mic check, mic check. Hope I sound all right. Welcome, Johnny. Let me unmute you just in case. If there's anyone else who thinks they might want to use their microphone during the class, ask now and I'll make sure you have access. You don't have to speak, but just in case you want to. Johnny, would be great if you said something so I could test that your voice makes it to the stream.
Good morning, everybody.
Aha, it does make it to the stream. I'm pretty excited about that.
Cool.
Okay. All right. So we'll get started at just about 5 after to allow people to find the stream or jump in if they're on Discord today. We'll just see how things go. Might be a small group. I didn't do any announcements today outside of Discord. I'll be trying a few experimental changes, and it always seems safe to have a smaller audience for that. Hello, hello, hello. We're going to have some fun today talking about not exactly how to prompt, because it's really hard to just tell someone straight up prompt like this. But certainly we'll work on how to understand why prompts fail and troubleshooting steps to sort of help them perform a little better. That seems to be something we can do. Welcome to those joining via YouTube or Twitch. Glad to have you. We'll be getting started in just a few minutes. Just grab a drink, hang out, and get comfortable. We'll get started soon. We're going to learn how to troubleshoot prompts, especially if you're trying to make a specific something something. Should be a lot of fun. Let's see. how many of you are actually here? I've got Johnny, I've got Fractal Bob. Harvey, how are you doing? Lucky Guava? Titanium? To find the chat, if you're on Discord desktop, it's above the list of names and it looks like a speech bubble. And if you click the speech bubble, a column on the far right of the display will open up, and that is the chat for this call. Welcome to Promptcraft for Beginners, trying to help people find their chat. It'd help if I shared my screen, I suppose. Let's try that. That ought to help. Welcome, Ipsady. Let me unmute you just in case. You don't have to speak. But if you end up wanting to speak at some point, you can now use your microphone. Welcome, Westendorf. Let me make sure you have access to your microphone just in case. Glad you dropped by. Welcome, Geo Creative Labs. Welcome, AJ. Good to see you. Let me have an emoji check-in for those of you who are here. Pick an emoji, any emoji, stick it in the chat. Who do we have? We have Ipsady. We have Johnny Bones. We have Fractal Bob. We have Westendorf. Excellent, excellent. Do we have anyone else out there? Welcome, welcome to Midjourney's Promptcraft for Beginners, prompting for beginners. I think we should just go ahead and get started. And Ipsady, Johnny, Fractal, and Westendorf will have to be my pretend students so that there's some interaction when I'm prompting for interaction. Otherwise, I'm just going to be talking to myself. So you guys pretend along with me here. Okay, here we go. All right. Well, hey, everyone. Glad you could make it to Prompting for Beginners on this sunny, fluffy, clouded day here in Texas, September 13th, 2025. We will be here for about 2 hours, but there's going to be a break in the middle so that we can stretch and take bio breaks and get a drink or burst into tears or whatever we need to do. You are in the right place if you ever typed a prompt and hit enter and thought, well, wow, that's absolutely not what I asked for. Is there anyone here who has gone through that before where you have asked Midjourney for something and gotten back God knows what. Yeah, once or twice thousand. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's basically just the experience of using Midjourney, of wrestling with the type of artist's tool that Midjourney is. And Midjourney is an artist's tool, and like any tool, it resists in some directions and complies in others. And we're here to sort of dispel the mystery of that a little bit and work on, what kind of things can we do to create the images we want to see. So this is sort of just us hanging out and poking at Midjourney and trying to learn how to make what's in our head show up on the canvas. And to get there, we'll play with prompts, but we'll go beyond playing with prompts. And I'm going to take you into the strangely brain-like engine room of Midjourney itself, just to see if knowing a little bit about how Midjourney works helps you build your prompts a little better. One thing before we start, which I normally have to say only when there's just a really big crowd, so that might not make any difference today. But before we start, please refrain from posting images into the chat. It causes the chat to scroll pretty fast. Scroll. And I'm going to be trying to use the chat to share information. But definitely do use the chat to ask questions, answer questions, talk to me, talk to each other about what we're discussing and so on. But images scroll rather a lot. So let's not do that. Let me practice this again. Emoji check-in. Who's here? I know you just did it. Let's do it again. We've had some people join, maybe Maki or Hyperdog or Dishy. We've got Obsadi. What about UA Designs or Titanium? We've got Johnny Bones. I see your emoji react. I see Obsadi. I'm looking at my people on Twitch and YouTube. We've got Westendor. All right, who else do we have? Stick an emoji in the chat. Any emoji. Oh, we do have UA Designs. Great to see you. Okay. So, all right. Where's my window? Here we go. Meow, meow. You thought I was going to do slides, but surprise, I'm not going to do slides. Let's start by watching how prompts go wrong. Okay. Yeah, prompts go wrong. Look, I'm writing it down. I'm going to admit it. Midjourney is an artist tool. It's a complex artist tool. It has resistances, and it has it resists and it complies. And it's sometimes hard to tell what direction it's going to go. And this class is going to help you figure out which direction it's going to go. So we're going to start by watching how prompts go wrong, because they will go wrong. But okay, that's sometimes the fun part, basically. I mean, there are two basic strategies for using Midjourney. I think there are probably, maybe more, but let me talk about two different strategies for using Midjourney. One is that we can give it words with no particular outcome in mind. We're just exploring and discovering, and we're just trying to pull the lever of the dopamine casino and see what amazing image we get next. I am so into, oh, hey, Hyperdog, yay. I'm so kind of really into the explore discover thing, where I just like mess around with Midjourney. I don't try to create anything particular. In fact, I actually made just for myself this little GPT that produces interesting word lists. I'll show you this GPT. And it just produces really cool word lists that, I mean, just have all kinds of strange, I mean, I can't even, let me put this in the chat so you can look at it more closely. All kinds of strange combinations of words like beaker sets and Jacques Tati. Like, what does that look like? Like, I'll just grab little parts of this and go into my Midjourney and just create my create tab and just see what goes on if I use these words. Well, that's fascinating. This guy seems to be drinking directly from his chemistry set. I wonder what happens in the next panel. Yeah, seems safe. That seems safe. But this is just, you know, exploring and discovering. And I think that that just goes to establish the point that there's no right way to prompt. There's no right way to prompt because there's no way for me as a, you know, to know what you're after. You can prompt any way you want. There's no right way to prompt. There are no templates. There's no advice anyone can give you that works all the time. Don't let anyone sell you anything, because if you just want to explore, you can explore any way you want. If you've typed anything and it gives you the image that pleases you, then you've prompted correctly. But okay, when you're aiming for a specific image and something's off, then, you know, there's troubleshooting steps, systematic ways of troubleshooting, because sometimes we're not playing around exactly. We're not just exploring. We want to guide Midjourney into producing a particular image we have in mind. We want prompt adherence. That's the phrase. If you ever want to like Google it, it's prompt adherence. And that's like the second way to do it. And I wouldn't put verses here. I don't think verses is correct at all. I would definitely say and. I think we all do both of these. We explore, we discover, and we also go for specific images and crave prompt adherence. And I think those are the two ways you can go into Midjourney, and this is where we're going to focus in the prompt adherence area, because this is where there are specific ways of troubleshooting and specific ways of making sure that you've maximized your chances of getting what you want out of the canvas. Does that mean you'll ever get what you want out of the canvas? No, no, I'm afraid not. But it does mean that you can maximize your attempts. There we go. I meant to do that. So okay, let's check in with the folks who have joined. So far, so good. Emoji check-in, pick an emoji, any emoji. Just making sure you guys are out there. Welcome, PCN Loot. I see you, Douglas. Welcome, Symbolica. Great to see Jack. Thank you very much. Great to see Yiggy. Yig. I'm just going to call you Yig. Okay. So what kind of mistakes do we see Midjourney make? What kind of mistakes do we see Midjourney make? I think there are, I lump them into three categories. And so let's talk about these three categories. The first category is missing or lost details. Details that are just dropped. They don't show up. You see the detail in the prompt, but it just needs to be on the side of a milk carton. It never shows up. You don't know what happened to it. Another one is let's see if I can put this in here for you. Okay. Right. Another one is blending, and blending is when the AI mixes characters or objects together so they don't stay visually separate. And when we see uncontrolled blending, we see everything starting to take on characteristics of other things in the image. But we can also do controlled blending, which is how we end up with cool hybrid animals like a puppy macaw or something. And the last thing I want to talk about, the last category, is incoherence. And incoherence is when Midjourney's output stops making visual sense. Figures, objects, or scenes lose internal consistency. For example, a person might have 3 arms sprouting from their shoulder. All parts of the composition have collapsed into visual nonsense. So let's look directly at examples of these. Make this nice and big and zoom in a little so you can see this okay. All right. Missing or drop details. What if your prompt is this? This is missing details. What if your prompt is a young woman wears a floral scarf, red glasses, a purple vest, engineering boots, carries an orange leather purse, and she wears her black hair long, braided with pink feathers. Her ankle-length skirt is bordered with stars and moons. She wears a dark purple sash belt that dangles down her hip. She is standing in a library holding out her library card to the old librarian behind the counter. This is journalistic photography. So you might think to yourself, well, of course details go missing. Of course there's going to be blending or incoherence or whatever the problem is. It's such a long prompt. But in fact, as you will see, the length of the prompt, the number of words in the prompt, it is not what causes the problem. It's not the length of the prompt. Not the prompt length. As we will see, it is going to be what's in the prompt, literally what words they are, not how many there are. So you can see right away that my personalization is on. Let's try that again without my personalization, because that just wreaks havoc with prompt adherence. One more time with feeling. I'm just going to randomly show how there's missing. I mean, the first thing we can see is missed is there's no librarian behind the counter. Her hair doesn't have braids. She doesn't have, I mean, it's just she doesn't have a library card. There's still no librarian. She doesn't have a library card. She doesn't have black hair. She doesn't have braided hair. There's just, at least she's holding something out here. But I mean, in none of these, oh good, she's got some sort of library card, but nothing else is right. So I mean, there's just the Midjourney just doesn't add all the details in there. That's the most one of the most common problems that we see that we can address today. So what did we mean by blending? Let's look at an example of blending. So let's use a really short prompt. Let's say a bunny, a hedgehog, a mouse, and a fuzzy monster have a picnic. Let's see. Blending means, if you remember, blending is when the AI mixes characters or objects together so they don't stay visually separate. So here's the mouse, here's the hedgehog, fuzzy monster, rabbit, and extra thing. I don't know what he is, but welcome to the picnic, sir. I don't know what's going on here. We have a bunny, a hedgehog bunny monster, a hedgehog fuzzy monster, and a hedgehog. Here we have a hedgehog and a bunny and a fuzzy monster. This is a really cute style. This one we have a small bunny, a big bunny, a fuzzy monster, and a monster hedgehog. Oh, and a mouse and what appears to be a tiny backpack. Maybe that's a mouse. It's hard to say what that is. So Midjourney is not able to keep these subjects separate to save its life. So that's blending. That's what we mean by blending. So now we've looked at missing or drop details. We've looked at blending. Let's look at incoherence. Incoherence is when Midjourney's output stops making visual sense. So let's do an even shorter prompt. This is even shorter. Put this in your chat for you. 3 acrobats do cartwheels on the beach. Let's look at this one. This one, oh my God, what happened? His butt's on the wrong side. His head's on backwards. His feet are not well. He's got a knee where his thigh is. His head's not clear. This isn't so bad. I don't really think that his torso is on correctly. But that's not bad, Midjourney, I guess. This one's quite broken. But these are it helps that they're in silhouettes. So I can't really critique them over much. Do they have hands for feet? Oh my God. Oh my God. It's terrible. Let's look at this one. This one is horribly broken. This one has 3 hands on the bottom. A head a leg that goes nowhere, a head with no neck. This is just very disturbing. This person has I don't know what that is. Yeah, this one. There's no way to talk about incoherence because it's just so incoherent. So that's the 3 kinds of Midjourney mistakes. So let me do a check-in. 3 kinds of Midjourney mistakes. So far, so good. Emoji check-in, pick an emoji, any emoji. How are you doing? Or if you have a question, you can ask a question. Otherwise, just emoji check-in. So I know who's out there. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, what about PCN Loot? Hey, Zimbulia. What about Austin Reginald's? Welcome to Prompting for Beginners. We just looked at 3 kinds of Midjourney's mistakes. So, what can we do? What can we do? That's the biggest question. If there's going to be these 3 mistakes, then the biggest question is what can we do to help? What can we do to control this? Well, control is the very first thing we should learn. Troubleshooting step number one is, did I control it? Troubleshooting step number one, did I control it? And we'll try this in I just got an ink splat from my digital ink. Did I control it? The first thing we should do is make sure we're in control of the canvas. And that's what I call the image. Since we're artists, I don't typically say image, I say canvas. If it's not controlled if it's not controlled with the prompt, then Midjourney defaults to its own learned stereotypes, and we have to make sure we're owning the canvas, right? We're the artists, not Midjourney. So the most basic troubleshooting step is to ask yourself, did I control it? Am I controlling it? Am I controlling it? At the most fundamental level, for example, we want to make sure our prompt addresses the full digital composition. So here we have this canvas, and it has a composition, which is the placement of elements on the canvas. So we want to make sure we have control of whatever the subject is going to be, the subject or focal point, right? Whoop, come on now. Focal point, right? Subject. We want to make sure that we are, doing something about the background or the style, the background or the context, rather, that focal point or subject is presented in. And then we want to concern ourselves with really sort of the whole expression of the image, which is the aesthetic, right? The style, the appearance of it. That's in our control too. So let's take an example prompt here. Example prompt. A woman drinks from an owl-shaped mug sitting in a cafe, editorial photography. What is the focal point or subject of this prompt? The woman. Okay. What is the background or context in this prompt? I think the woman plus the mug as a single focal point is right, Symboli. It's a good point. Woman plus mug. Cafe. I agree that the background and context is cafe. What is the aesthetic or style of this particular prompt? Photography. Does it get any more specific than that? Editorial photography. Okay, so this is not a template. So it might be tempting to say, well, okay, this is like a Mad Lib, a template. All I have to do is do a subject and a background and a style, and that's my prompt template, right? But I don't think so. I don't think it can be a template. What I think it can be is a checklist. I think you can say, I have a subject, a background, and a style. But it's a checklist. So if you have a prompt that just goes on forever, then you can just, as a troubleshooting step, make sure, where's my subject? Okay, my subject's here. Great. Where is my background? There's my background. And what did I do with my style? There's some style. I mentioned some style here. And here, oh, look at that. I have more background here, and I mentioned the subject. You, so in the end, you you can check off all of your items because they exist somewhere in the prompt. I forget what color it was using for what. I think it was background. That was subject, and that was style. Right? They exist somewhere in the prompt. So that's what I want you to remember about this is that it's a checklist, not a template. Oh, excellent, Austin. Glad to see you. Glad to see you. So let me put that troubleshooting step in your chat. If your prompt doesn't control it, Midjourney makes it up. Troubleshooting step number 1 is, did I control it? Am I controlling it? For example, as a checklist, your prompt at least needs to address the subject, the background, and the style. So now we are on our way to writing prompts that at least have a fighting chance at controlling the composition. So let me check in with you guys. Control it yourself. So far, so good? Emoji check-in here. You can ask a question if you have one. But otherwise, just emoji check-in. Austin, now you can do an emoji. All right. I see Johnny. I see Austin. I see Sadie. Woohoo! I see Westendorf. Is the composition control also controlling the coherence? I don't think so. It may, but there is no rule that says if you perfectly control the composition, you will nail coherence. It's a good question, though. But if you're struggling with coherence, the troubleshooting step remains. One of the things you can ask if your coherence is down is, are you controlling the canvas? Now, that doesn't solve everything. Can the acrobats ever be coherent? The 3 acrobats on the beach? I'm not sure that they can ever be entirely coherent. Some problems can't be solved with prompting. In our advanced classes, you can learn when you need to use multiple steps. There might be the use of the editor or retexture or remix or image references. But as beginners, we explore prompting more than once to chase the image we want, not re-rolling, but actually prompting more than once. We write the very best prompt we can, the one we're convinced based on everything we've learned. This will do the trick. We think that it's a pretty solid, robust prompt. We've done the subject, we've done the background, we've done the style, it seems clear. But if it doesn't do the trick, then there's sort of a second troubleshooting step, which is tweaking the prompt. Sometimes we call it tweaking the prompt. Tweaking the prompt. Tweaking the prompt. This is sort of a troubleshooting step number 2. And it's basically, you prompt smart. And then you add support for problem areas. Let's look at how that works. First, let me go ahead and paste it in here, right? Yeah, provisional prompting, that's right. Troubleshooting step number 2 is to prompt more than once. You need to know what the prompt will do. That's the provisional prompting that Westendorf just talked about. So you prompt again to support the details Midjourney misses. You add descriptive support for details Midjourney got wrong. You add clarity, often in the form of punctuation, grammar, and spelling. So let's take a look at that in practice. Bring this back up, put our acrobats away. And let's look at that woman drinking. A woman drinks from an owl-shaped mug sitting in a cafe, editorial photography. So that's a pretty good prompt. We've established that it controls the subject, the background, and the style. But I'm not really 100% sure I like the sippy cup look. For some reason, she's got both her hands on the mug. And she's holding it up to her face, maybe because I said drinks from. Like, I'm starting to see which words maybe might be at fault. Like I said, drinks from, so that maybe is bringing it up to her face. And I didn't specify that it should be just one hand. So if that's what I want, then maybe if that's what I want, thanks, Kinky, for the announcement. I'll let people know at the end as well. If that's what I want, then the first thing I should do is add descriptive support for the details Midjourney got wrong. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to say is a woman holds an owl-shaped, holds, not drinks, to get it away from her face, holds an owl-shaped mug in one hand. Sitting in a cafe, editorial photography. Aha! Well, wait, hold on. She's sort of holding it in one hand, but she's still cradling the damn thing. These are some really cute mugs. I would not be sad if someone gave me these mugs as a gift. I really like this blue one. Okay, sorry, distract. I'm starting to shop from my Midjourney images, but okay. There's something else that went wrong with this picture. Does anyone want to call out what just happened? I gave more attention to the mug. I said that, first of all, I took out drinks, so now she's holding it. So that's all about her hands. And I also said it's in one hand. So there's all this information about hands and the mug. And so what happened to my focal point? My focal point became about the mug and hands because I started spending, I got mugged, says Hebo. I started spending more time on the mug and the hands. So Midjourney, responsive to the amount of attention I spent on it, shifted its attention to the same thing, and the focal point of the image changed. Suddenly, the image is all about this mug and her hands. So, okay, how do I correct for that? I have to add descriptive support for the details Midjourney got wrong. The part that Midjourney got wrong was her face is gone. So how do I add descriptive support for her face? I have to mention her face. I have to describe her face, get it back in the mix as the focal point. Give it a fighting chance to be part of the focal point. So now I'm saying, yeah, Himbo's like, say hair or eyes or lipstick. I'm saying a woman with brown eyes and her hair in a messy bun holds an owl-shaped mug in one hand, sitting in a cafe, editorial photography. So Midjourney is going to strive to obey the prompt. The only way it can obey the prompt is to put her face back in the frame, because I mentioned the face. Yeah, my face has descriptive support. So great. We've got her face back. We've got a sort of a one hand, but she's still cradling. She's not sippy cupping anymore, except in number 4. But she's still, her second hand is still on the mug. So my troubleshooting step says, prompt again to support the details Midjourney misses. Add descriptive support for the details Midjourney got wrong. Okay. So her hand is still dealing with the mug. How could I add a supportive detail to make that hand not hold on to the mug? Does anyone have any ideas? Anyone have any ideas of how I might get the hand away from the mug, that extra hand? Well, what if I gave, oh, there we go. Johnny Bones comes in with the answer. Give the hand something else to do. Mention another detail like book or wiping her hair. Right. UA Designs has it too. The Queen of the World. Hi, Queen. Give the hand something to do that isn't holding the mug. And Midjourney, of course, will strive to obey the prompt. And if you give the hand something else to do, then Midjourney will strive to make that true. So let's try. A woman with brown eyes and hair in a messy bun holds an L-shaped mug in one hand and her phone in the other hand. She's got her phone and her mug. Did that work? Holy crap, it worked. It pretty much worked. We've got her holding the mug in one hand and her phone in the other. Finally, she's holding the mug in just one hand. We can go even further. And say, it's editorial photography of a boho woman. You can describe the mug a little more. You can start building in details. If you start building in a lot of detail, it might start getting messy again. Let's see, a boho woman with messy hair holds a teal L-shaped mug in one hand and her pink phone in the other hand, sitting in a modern cafe. Can I start layering in details without losing? I can. Look at that. What if I wanted to control her more with brown eyes, gold glasses, and blonde hair in a messy bun? Starting to add details in. There we go. Can I control what she's wearing? Wearing a orange sundress. Uh-oh. What is that? That's incoherence. That's not bad. Still okay. Incoherence. Her hands are broken. So if you start getting incoherence, one of the troubleshooting steps, as I mentioned, is if you start getting problems with a prompt, the second part of this troubleshooting step is add clarity in the form of correct punctuation, grammar, and spelling. So this is just a big giant run-on sentence. What if I say a boho woman with brown eyes, gold glasses, and messy bun sits in a cafe? She holds a teal-shaped mug in one hand and her pink phone in the other hand. She is wearing an orange sundress. Oh, in a modern cafe. She's wearing an orange sundress. Oh, editorial photography. What if I say editorial photography of a boho woman? Remember, it's not a template, it's a checklist. Okay, does that help the fact that one of mine is incoherent? Uh-oh. It's fine there. She's holding the mug weirdly. No, she's got two-handed there. She's got a pet owl here and a regular mug. She's holding the mug with one hand and her phone in the same hand. That one worked. Oh, I'm so glad to hear it, Austin. Editorial is giving the straight-on face. I'm always concerned about the width of some of these fingers. Yeah. So, okay, maybe this is not. What if I said portrait photography, which might be a little more attractive than editorial photography? I'm also going to break my sentences up again. She sits in a modern cafe. She holds a teal-shaped owl mug in one hand. Oh, wait, she holds a teal owl. Wait a minute. She holds a mug in the shape of an owl in one hand. And her pink phone in the other hand. She's wearing an orange sundress. So I'm starting to clean up, not my word choice. I'm just cleaning up my grammar to see if it gets any closer. Oh, I forgot to say teal. Well, this is not better. Modern cafe holding a teal mug in the shape of an owl in one hand. She holds her pink phone in the other hand. She's wearing an orange sundress. Aha! Nailed it. 4 out of 4. Now, should I strive to do 4 out of 4 every time? No. Why bother? Look, this mug is sick of her shit. I want a mug like that. Oh, that's a great idea, Queen, to say she's using her phone instead of holding her phone. I want this mug. Oh God. Okay. I don't know if that's a mug of owl, but anyway, we seem to have sorted it out. And we went from a bunch of comma separated lists that make no sense to a bunch of really nicely written sentences. And once we get into how Midjourney works, you'll see why this is important, why it's important to write in coherent sentences. This is what we ended up with. And I can try she uses her she uses her phone in the other hand. Something like that. I think you're on the right track. That's something I would experiment with. Look how many iterations it took before I cleaned it up and got it to the level of detail I wanted. Is that expensive to iterate that many times? It might be. Will you always be iterating this many times for the rest of your existence? No. Eventually, you'll be fluent enough in writing prompts that you'll probably only need to revise 2 or 3 times unless you're doing something particularly challenging. Plus, there's other things to do other than revising the prompt. I want to see what this looks like with my personalization on. So in my Create tab, I'm going to the right of the Imagine bar, and I'm using pressing P for personalize. This is called the prompt bar, and this is called the Imagine bar. And so I turned on P to use my global profile. I just want to see how she looks. Well, I got some incoherence with her hand coming out of her knee. But okay. Other than that, she's acquired tattoos. She's more artsy. She's more sun-browned. And she looks tired. So apparently that's my profile. That's funny. But personalization is a great way to pull the images into an aesthetic that you've told Midjourney you already like. So that's tweaking the prompt. So far so good. Emoji check-in or questions if you have questions. Emoji check-in, y'all. Austin, good? Sadie? Anyone else out there? Okay. Excellent. So, tweaking the prompt. We just talked about that. Prompt smart, then add support. But why do some things work and some things don't? We saw sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. The next question might quite naturally be why? Like we're going to lose our mind. Um because we just don't know, we don't know what's controlling that. We don't know what's behind the scenes making this prompt mysteriously, nail it and the other one lead us in the wrong direction. So I think it helps to learn how Midjourney works. How Midjourney works. So let's talk about that at a very high level. Like I'm not going to like drown you in AI diffusion whatever. You're not going to become an AI expert from this. But I just want to start with the big question, why does Midjourney work the way it does? And sometimes why doesn't it? You know what I mean? And the answer is that the whole process kind of looks magical, but under the hood, it's 3 stages that we're going to talk about. Training and diffusion. And if you don't know these words, that's okay. I'm going to explain them to you. And denoising. These are the 3 things we're going to talk about in order to understand how Midjourney works. So training. Training begins with a data set like Lion's. Here's an example data set, okay? Lion is a nonprofit group. These guys, they're a nonprofit. That scrapes images and captions from across the internet. Like this looks like flowers, right? So this is probably like floral, flowers, botanical, colorful, botany, gardening. Okay, so there's words correlated to these images. And so Lion is a nonprofit group that scrapes images and captions from across the internet. Midjourney doesn't scrape, not links, not images. What we do is we purchase a data set from Lion, and then we curate it ourselves. And that curation matters, right? We filter for beauty, for usefulness to artists, for ethical use. We cut out, stuff that's not going to help if we can. We try to cut out screenshots or pornography or anything else that doesn't serve creative practice and our terms of service. So Midjourney actually, what the set that Midjourney actually trains on is hand selected and refined as much as possible. And from there, Midjourney learns correlations. Let me draw an eyeball. Well, let me draw the brain. Do you see how the colors correspond? That's because Midjourney is looking. This is an eyeball. Midjourney is looking at these images and transforming them into this clouds of meaning. Clouds of meaning. Every training image. Well, let me back up. The model is learning correlations. Okay, so which words align with which shapes and colors and textures. So these words, floral, botanical, color, botany, gardening, are now part of this uh, cloud. And as part of this process, every training image, so take a random training image. Let's take this one for a minute here. And it's intentionally turned into static, into what looks like, actually, let me just put it in there. Hold on. It's turned into static, into visual noise. And it's done, that happens in a series of controlled steps. So you start with this this image here. See if I can pick it up. Can I pick it up? No. You start with this image. Hold on, I gotta let it go. Let go, let go. I'm still holding it. Why is that? Okay. You start with this image, which we see looks like a little flowery thing with some leaves around it. And in waves, step by step by step, it's transformed into step by step by step, it's transformed into this static. And at each step, the model learns to reverse that step. So now I'm painting the other direction. So it's going two directions. It's learning how to transform each image into the visual noise, and at each step the model also learns how to reverse that specific recipe of noise back into the original picture. And that's how it develops the skill we rely on later, diffusion. Diffusion is a skill that it learns. So this was training. And this is diffusion. Diffusion is the stage where the model learns. Diffusion is the stage when the model learns. It learns how random noise can be turned back into a picture, and how a picture can be turned into random noise, back and forth and back and forth. At each step, during training, remember, real images were, at each step, real images were gradually scrambled into static, as I said. And at each step, the model practiced figuring out how to process that static and bring the picture back. Okay, that back and forth practice created rules for how to change noise into images. That's what's in here. Rules for how to change noise into images. Diffusion is the skill, but that skill is not applied until we come along with a prompt. We come along with a prompt, a vintage flower bed. Hyperdog asks, will this stream be archived as a video that can be watched later? Yes, we are on several, we are recorded in several places. I will paste those in your chat if you are wanting to either watch us live or watch recordings later. We are on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch at this time. Even right now as I speak. So diffusion is the skill But that skill is not applied until we come along with a prompt. So here we are, we've come along with a prompt. We want a vintage flower bed. So we show up with our prompt, and Midjourney starts with not a blank canvas, but a patch of random static that follows the type of pattern, the brand of pattern that the model practiced on. And we call this the seed. This is called the seed, which is the field of random noise that looks like television static that Midjourney starts with. Midjourney doesn't start with a blank canvas. Midjourney starts with a seed. It looks like television static. And then step by step, again in waves, Midjourney passes over this patch of random static, and the model applies what it learned to sculpt the static into an image that matches your prompt. And that's the application of the diffusion skill. Once we're actually placing pixels using the diffusion skill, it's called denoising, which kind of makes sense because, we're literally denoising the noise into an image. We're changing the values of the pixels over and over and over again until that static is sculpted into an image. And in fact, Midjourney shows us its denoising process every time we prompt. When I run a prompt, I'll just rerun this one randomly. You see the seed at the front, and you see it denoising using diffusion. It denoises into the image. That we think it's just a progress image. What Midjourney is showing us is actually snapshots of the actual denoising process. So how does your prompt control this denoising and actually make the image you're describing? So that's a fun story, actually. And it's actually pretty important to understand if you want to understand how to change your prompt to make Midjourney do more with it. So we have a vintage flower bed. That was our sample prompt. Put that back there. Think of every word in your prompt as a bee. As a bee. Technically, they're called tokens. Okay, I admit it. Technically, they're called tokens. But we're going to talk about token bees. Token bees. And a prompt is like a swarm of bees. And the swarm flies into the math. The swarm flies into the model's math world, which is called latent space, by the way. You might hear that and tossed around and you're like, what the heck? Well, the latent space is this math world. And the bees gather pollen. They come out of there with pollen, which are the rules about textures and shapes and colors and lighting it learned during the model's prior training, right? When it correlated images and words together. So you have some strong token bees that return loaded with pollen. They carry a big visual influence into the image. And then we have weak token bees that come back with barely any pollen. They have a subtle or I don't know, subtle is a kind way of putting it, a subtle influence. It's easy to drown them out. It's easy that they might get lost. And then we have ambiguous or chaotic token bees that sometimes bring unexpected pollen. I'm going to write these down. Strong, weak, and chaotic. That brings unexpected pollen, okay? Like you say declaration. hoping for declaration of love, like romance stuff, right? And this bee shows up with parchment scrolls and quills and 18th century typography because it's thinking Declaration of Independence. So how does Midjourney make sure it gets our image right if there's all of this potential chaos coming in when we send our tokens out and they come back with potential chaos? There's the next thing that Midjourney does in its process is called conditioning. This one is especially important to learn, is conditioning. Because conditioning is the model's checklist, right? Does it look coherent? Did it match the prompt? In fact, it's constantly checking these things. A vintage flower bed, and the swarm brings back all the pollen, right? This, the diffusion rules, which by the way are called embeddings in AI jargon, because the pollen was scooped out. Remember, the bees flew into the math world? The pollen is sort of scooped out from where it was embedded in these overlapping clouds of meaning in the latent space, right? So the pollen is the embeddings. It's what it was scooped out from those overlapping clouds of meaning in the latent space. So we've got beddings, which is, in our metaphor, the pollen. And we have the prompt itself. And at every step of the denoising process, the model sort of glances at two things. The checklist of your prompt. Okay, A is a weak token, so it probably doesn't matter what's going on there. But vintage is very strong. Did I do that? Did I do flower? Did I do bed? At every step of the denoising process, the model glances at these two things: the checklist of your prompt and the pollen brought back by your token bees, aka the rules for pixel patterns. These are the rules for pixel patterns for the pixel placement. The placement of pixel patterns. And this back and forth checking for correctness is called conditioning. And it results in the step-by-step sculpting of the image toward what your prompt asks for, while simultaneously keeping it visually coherent according to what the model learned in training. So, okay, we've got this whole process mapped out. We've got the training. We've got the diffusion. We've got the denoising. We've got the conditioning. But in Midjourney, jobs run on purchase server time. If the model runs out of time before it can make sense of the swarm and fully condition the resulting image, then stuff just may stay messed up. There's no time to clean up the mistakes. There's no time to fix anything. I mean, if you think of, you've bought this time on the server. Here's the time you've bought on the server. And, here's a certain amount of time spent on, let me change the colors. Certain amount of time spent going to get the rules, and a certain amount of time spent denoising the rules, and then a certain amount of time spent conditioning, which actually starts back there. And then on top of that, there's all of the other things that Midjourney does for us, which is like fixing style and adding image references and We're way out of time. I don't even look like some sort of sick caterpillar. We're way out of time. So, and even with more time, even with unlimited time, prompt adherence would not be perfect. And that's because this conditioning step, also depends on how clearly your words map to what the model learned, right? It's how clearly your words map to what the model learned during training, or if they do at all. And some token Bs, some tokens are ambiguous, some of the meanings overlap. Um, sometimes the model favors statistically common patterns in its data, which we call archetypes. Oh my goodness, archetypes. We might have time to talk about that. That's kind of important. So, more time would help solve some of our problems. And Midjourney actually does give you tools to increase the time that you can spend using your money to see if that helps your prompt. It often can, and it often can't. I mean, it's hard to it's a random call depending on your prompt and what you're trying to do. So time would help solve some of our problems, but not all of them. But given our job's limited time and the chaos our token bees can bring home, it does turn out that improving the prompt is, I would say, it's probably the most powerful way to improve the outcome. Prompt design is often the most effective lever you have as an artist. And that's because of how all this works, which I hope now you have some understanding of how that works. From training to diffusion to the token bees causing denoising, and then the conditioning to make sure that everything works out okay. Phew. So far, so good. Emoji check-in. Are you guys still out there? How you doing? Any questions? You don't have to ask a question. You can just do an emoji. Johnny Bones. Emoji check-in. Okay, Ipsady. Okay, Angie. Who else is out there? To find the chat, you click the speech bubble at the top of the list of names on the left, if you're on the desktop. And that will open a chat area on the far right, like a third column, if you're on the desktop. Who else is out there? Emoji check-in. All right. If you have a question, feel free to type it in. So again, we buy minutes for each job. Right? I mean, just to be clear, we buy minutes for each job. That's what we're paying for, right? So if Midjourney becomes incoherent or blends or drops details when the prompt is asking for too much or in the wrong way or something like that, that suggests there's a way to write prompts that are a little better or optimized. Everyone gets excited. We can optimize prompts. Yes, cliffhanger. Let's take a quick break. Let's take a quick break. I'll put the timer up. We just did so much so fast. I think it makes sense to take a 5-minute break. See if you can. You need to run to the bathroom or get a drink. Get up and stretch, ask questions. I like how this is labeled 10 minutes, but it's a 5-minute break. Type in your questions if you have questions. Okay, welcome back to part 2 of Midjourney Prompting for Beginners. We're coming back from a 5-minute break. I left you with a cliffhanger. If Midjourney makes mistakes because it runs out of time, is there a way to write prompts that are a little better optimized? And the answer is yes. It turns out that when Midjourney gets to decide its own details based on the statistically dominant defaults in its training data, then it takes a little less processing time. That's archetypes. So optimization means understanding when you can encourage Midjourney to do it for you versus when you need to step in and control it yourself. Remember, the first troubleshooting step was control it yourself. The third troubleshooting step is maybe I don't want to control it myself. So let's take a look at that. So what are archetypes? An archetype is the dominant representation of the thing in Midjourney's training. It's the statistically dominant representation of the thing in that cloud that you saw, the cloud of colors in the latent space. Every token B has a strength, remember, and an archetype is when the bee comes back with so much pollen it can barely move. There's so much information. So you can either describe the thing yourself, which sends out a huge swarm of token bees, or you can invoke the archetype, a single token bee, and let Midjourney take care of it with all the stereotypical details it knows about. It's easier to understand if we just show it like this. So I could actually write this out. A bearded man wearing a baseball cap, black and red checkered flannel shirt, work boots, denim jeans, carrying an axe. How many token bees is that? It's quite a few, and it gets this guy. But what is this guy? He's a lumberjack, right? He's a lumberjack. So I could just use the one word lumberjack, and I'd get the same guy, the very same guy. So learning when to describe versus invoke, you can invoke an archetype and get all the details for free, so to speak, or you can describe it and control it all yourself. Learning when to describe versus invoke is an important part of prompting. You'll want to use the invoke method to make your prompt more efficient, because using the word lumberjack and letting Midjourney supply all the default archetypal details uses less processing time than describing the lumberjack yourself. And now you know why, because you can picture those bees. So whenever you can, you want to deploy archetypes to make your prompt more effective, and at the same time, learn how to avoid them and use the describe method to control undesirable outcomes in the images you create. Because remember, some of those bees come back with stuff you just don't want. And some of those bees come back with stuff you don't want that's so strong that the stuff you do want has no chance. Let's take a look at what that's like. So here's an example of a woman sitting in a cafe on a rainy day. I did not have to mention the coffee. I didn't have to mention much. I didn't have to mention wooden tables or cozy atmospheres or the fact that there's a plate glass window that she's looking at. But all of that came with this one token bee cafe. That token bee came back hauling a huge amount of information. Right. And it included all of this just with one word, the archetype. But dun dun dun. The archetype of a cafe is really powerful. If you use the word cafe, everyone's going to have coffee. There's going to be coffee on every table. Even if you create something that starts to look like a cafe, there'll be coffee at the table, right? Because remember all those, how overlapping all of those rules for patterns, pixel patterns were in that latent space. Oh my goodness. If you even start to create an image that looks like it might be a cafe, you'll start getting coffee on the table. That's how powerful cafe is. So if you use the word cafe, everyone's going to have coffee. It's such a strong archetype that if I want to depict a woman sitting in a cafe without coffee at her table, I have to break the archetype by avoiding using the word cafe in the prompt at all. And so we end up with something like this. Now I'm using the describe method instead of the invoke method. I'm saying a woman sitting in a wooden chair at an empty wood round table in front of a single pane glass window looking out on a city sidewalk on a rainy day. Wood floors, dark walls, cozy atmosphere, etc. I'm saying it myself in order to recreate the cafe without using the word cafe. And in this way, I've accomplished the sense of the woman waiting at her table without having received her coffee yet. Because I can't, Midjourney doesn't take negation. I can't say a woman waiting at her table without having received coffee yet. Without, that token B comes back with nothing. Just without is not strongly correlated. So it doesn't, and it doesn't help us. Midjourney doesn't understand negation. So this is called breaking the archetype or avoiding the archetype or dodging the archetype. So let me ask, this is me, by the way, this owl with red glasses, that's my avatar. Any questions? Any questions about archetypes? If you have no questions, type NQ. And now, my regulars, which do you like better? NQ or emoji check-in? Now that you've tried both. You like the emoji check-in better? Well, Queen likes the emoji check-in better. Angie likes the emoji check-in better. And Q is more specific, but also it creates sort of pressure, right? Like, what if you don't know how to ask your question? Like, what if you're full of questions and you just and your brain is rattled with questions and you've heard so much information you don't know what to do? Maybe the emoji is the only thing you can do. I'm working on it. That's an experimental thing I wanted to try. I noticed that no questions created a lot more response, but maybe because there are just so many more people now than there were. And by the way, without prompt battles, it's possible that we can do Promptcraft games instead. So think about that. I'll ask a vote. Which one do you like? You like question breaks better than emoji check-in? Oh, hand raising. Oh, brain. Okay, we are almost done, by the way. Hi, Gibran. You're in the wrong channel for that question. Here's the channel. Click on that channel name, support, and ask the question again. My pleasure. So let's look at troubleshooting check number. I don't think it's 3 anymore. I think it might be 4. I think I need to go back to the slides. Besides archetypes, we're also worried about the chaotic tokens. Do you remember I talked about chaotic tokens, the bees that bring back unexpected things? Chaotic tokens are words Midjourney can't convert into concrete, renderable imagery. So these are things like, let's put a couple out there in your chat. Instructions. Midjourney just doesn't understand instructions. Like, make sure the lighting is dramatic. Draw a picture of a raven. Make sure, you can't talk to Midjourney that way unless you're in conversational mode. We do have conversational mode. If you want to talk to Midjourney the way you talk to ChatGPT, you need to use conversational mode. You go to your Create tab and click on this little speech bubble on your prompt bar over on the far right, conversational mode. And once you do that, you can say stuff like, draw a raven, on a dead branch. And then it will write the prompt for you. And then you can say, instead of a raven, make it a blue jay. Notice I'm chatting with it like it's ChatGPT. Now it's rewritten the prompt for me and it's made it a blue jay perched on a dead branch. Then I can say, give it a top hat. Right? The drawbacks to conversational mode are intense. The drawback of conversational mode is that this prompt that it writes has very low prompt adherence. It's fine for simple things. It's fine for simple things, but if you're trying to do anything complicated, the fact that the LLM that's writing these prompts doesn't have the rules for good prompting stops you. And it's possible they're doing that intentionally because they don't want conversational mode to be about that. They want conversational mode to be about ideation, about trying ideas quickly and easily and messing around. Like they don't want it to be, remember I told you there are two strategies for using Midjourney, and one is explore and discover, and one is prompt adherence. Conversational mode is designed to be an explore discover tool. So the prompt adherence side of things is really low. Now, that could change if the team has the bandwidth to play with it, then we could see that evolve. But the Midjourney teams are tackling other things right now. So going back to chaotic tokens, whoops. Let's see, we talked about instructions. Jargon. Emma just said HD, UHD, 8K, 4K. Yes, those are chaotic. F1.8 aperture, 16-bit linear EXR. Those things are not correlated in the ways that you expect or find desirable. Right? When your token B comes back and with its bag of pollen and says, here, make some pixel patterns with this, you might get you might get technical support documentation, you might get advertisements, you might get PDFs. I mean, we've tried to curate the training data so that there's not a lot of that sort of garbage stuff in there. But we can't help it. If you type these numbers and abbreviations like HD, those things are not reliably correlated to anything. Yeah, I mean, every token does something. Every word does something. But is it the something you want? Is it desirable? As a troubleshooting step, you want to remove jargon. If it's not hurting you, then if you put in HD, 8K, 4K, whatever, Unreal Engine, Vectorman, whatever, the trending on ArtStation, you can put anything you want into your prompt. The only time you have to sweat is if you want prompt adherence and you're not getting it. That's when you go, okay, I'm going to take these tokens out. I have to admit that I don't quite know what they're doing. So I'm going to take them out because it'll probably increase my prompt adherence. It's not like they're evil tokens. It's not like if you see someone using them, that person just doesn't know how to prompt, or whatever. There's no right way to prompt. If that person is throwing all those terms in there and likes what they get, then fine. They're fine. But as a troubleshooting step, you'd remove them. And you also want to be careful about abstract concepts. Like, a fairy overcome by a feeling of dread. Midjourney might not be able to nail that one, because what does that look like exactly? You didn't say. You're asking Midjourney to try to sort of guesstimate what you mean by a feeling of dread and what that looks like. So you might like what it looks like, but if you don't, then it's time to maybe use more specific language. Well, thank you, Josh C. So we want to use words that Midjourney understands. What does overcome look like? Josh, I'm going to give you your microphone because I can't remember what I just said. Hold on. Okay, what?
No, it wasn't important. You said a fairy overcome by a feeling of dread.
Oh, yeah. What does
Midjourney
overcome
doesn't
look
know
like?
Overcome.
I see. I thought I used the word overcome. Oh, you're right. Excellent point. Excellent point, my good sir. So we already talked about punctuation, spelling, and grammar can matter, but I just want to drive that home. All right. So I'm going to make a panda eat some stuff. Let's see. A panda. What do pandas eat? Bamboo, right? Oh, I'm in conversational mode. Hold up. Okay. A panda eats bamboo. So some shoots and leaves. Eat some shoots and leaves. Okay. So if we do a panda eat some shoots and leaves there like that, bamboo shoots, yeah, exactly. Then we get a panda with its bamboo. But if I use the Oxford comma and say a panda eats, shoots, and leaves, then we have a panda with a bow and arrow, with a gun. Okay? So if nothing else tells you about how how much punctuation matters, let that tell you. Midjourney can tell the difference between shoots with a comma and eats with a comma, and the whole pattern thing, and thing with commas, because Midjourney doesn't just look at one. When this is a swarm, this is not individual words. This is a whole swarm, and the swarm carries the pattern with it. So your punctuation, grammar, and spelling are important because it helps match. It helps the correlations match with rules for pixel patterns. Now, do you have to write like you learned in school every time you write a prompt? No, you can write any way you want. But if you're struggling and your prompt adherence is low, one of the things you can do is, all right, let me sort out my prompt with correct spelling, punctuation, and grammar, just in case. Because it'll separate out the ideas. It'll help the pattern matching. Let me just get all of it organized with correct spelling, punctuation, and grammar. And sometimes that helps with prompt adherence. So it's just a troubleshooting step. Heckin' yes, it can matter. No negation or absence. We talked about this a little bit. Negation words aren't viable in Midjourney. So you can't say without, but, yet, no, does not, will not, has not, except. But there's an easy way around that. It's instead of prompting what isn't there, prompt what is there. For example, if you want a unicorn that doesn't have a horn, well, what does that look like? What does a unicorn without a horn look like? Sadness. A unicorn without a horn looks like a horse. It's a horse. What's a Pegasus without wings? Still a horse. Also a horse. Also a horse. That's right. So how do we do a woman in a cafe hasn't received her coffee yet? What does that look like? What does a woman in a cafe without coffee look like? Not the jokes. I know she looks sad. She looks anxious. She looks lonely. Woman sitting at a table. What about the table? I think if Sadie, it has stuff on it, but not coffee. Okay, that's good. You can say an empty table, or you could say a table that contains, a newspaper, an iPhone, and a plate of biscuits, or something like that. And as long as you say what's on the table, you're controlling it. Take control of the table, right? Then you don't have to use negation. We talked about conversational mode. Avoid technical specs and metadata. So a lot of people like to type camera metadata into their prompts. A lot of people have picked that up from, I don't know where, YouTube, somewhere. So sometimes it does, if, I don't know, some people use it and they love what it does, and so they should use it. But if you're working on some prompt adherence thing, and you've been using these tokens, they're good candidates to remove because they are somewhat chaotic. There are really strong, reliable ways to stylize photography. Use iconic photographic styles that you can name, like Leica or Polaroid, something like that. Use photographer names to invoke elements of style, like Ansel Adams. Use media sources. That's fun. CNN, Vogue, Southern Living Magazine, National Geographic Magazine, right? You'll get some of their iconic composition and colors. And lastly, you want to use dense visual language. You want to write prompts using dense visual language so that every word is taking advantage of the limited processing power devoted to that job. You want to remove all these inefficient tokens we've been talking about to give more processing power to the effective tokens. Not processing power, processing time. Examples of descriptive, iconic, or visually evocative language. Techniques are great. Time periods, materials, style genres, art movements, media types, artist names. Ask yourself, what does it look like? Because you're thinking about that token bee busily wandering off into the cloud, and it's going to scoop up some embeddings, right? And, you've used the word whereas. What is that token bee going to scoop up? What does whereas look like? Right? So, it's not that you shouldn't use these words. You should, because sometimes they belong there because of grammar. You need to use them for grammatical reasons, because then they add to the pattern of the whole phrase or the whole sentence, which increases your correlations. But occasionally, the writing is too literary, especially if it comes from an untrained ChatGPT. And then there's all kinds of phrases and words and sentences and even concepts that don't make any sense, like the gentle hum of machinery. What does the gentle hum of machinery look like? I mean, I'm not sure what that's going to return. You could save yourself some processing time by taking phrases like that out. Again, it's a troubleshooting step. None of this is prescriptive. It's not how you need to write the prompt. It's what to check for if your prompt isn't creating the prompt adherence you want. So, okay, you made it. Woo! If it's not controlled with the prompt, Midjourney makes it up. So control it yourself. Everyone, control it yourself. Look at what your prompt produced, see what went wrong, and then get in there. If there's stuff on the table you don't like, control what's on the table. If there's somebody's hand doing something nutty, control that hand yourself. Tell it what to do. If somebody's not looking at the camera, or whatever, give them a mood or an attitude that make them confident or bossy or something that will make them stare you down, stare at the camera, right? And you'll start to see the prompt exceeding the time allotted to the job because you'll notice incoherency and blending and dropping details. So experiment with maybe some archetypes and invoke and describe if you want to do that. And think about the words you're using, because if the prompt contains chaotic tokens, you might be losing control of the canvas. So those are good candidates when you're troubleshooting to remove. You also want to lean into correct punctuation and grammar and dense visual language when you can, because generally that's a more reliable way of writing prompts. So congratulations, my graduates. And by the way, you might have reached the end of the class, but you do get 24/7 support for Promptcraft with your membership. There's web-based Promptcraft support. If you're not a big fan of Discord, those of you out there watching via YouTube or Twitch or whatever you're doing, you can come in to the Promptcraft support room on the web. It's just web chat. You go to the chat and type in your question. You can go into the Promptcraft web room. There's a lobby. Here, let me show you. If you go to chat and then click lobby and then wait for it to load, because it'll take a beat for it to load. Choose Promptcraft. That's where all of us nerds are hanging out. So definitely come and drop your question in Promptcraft. And there's also the Promptcraft room here in Discord. You can also leave comments on Twitch or YouTube or Facebook, and someone will come and help you, especially if you tag me. Coming up is the link to the feedback form. I appreciate that you asked. We do have a feedback form if you have enjoyed or actually not enjoyed this class, and you'd like to talk about the whiteboarding, whether it was helpful for you or not, the slides, whether you like them or not, my narration, anything you want to say or that you observed about the event, you can throw that into the feedback form. And that's how the Midjourney bosses try to figure out what to do with live events. Now, ordinarily, I would at this point direct you to prompt battles this afternoon, but our host had something come up today. So there is no prompt battles this afternoon. So this is the last planned Midjourney event of the day. Now, depending on what my wife and family ask of me, I may be able to come back through and do Promptcraft games during the same time as Promptcraft as prompt battles usually run. So we'll see how that goes. In the interim, does anyone have any questions or problems that they're working on here on Midjourney? Soundscapes was last week and will come again. I don't know when. I will announce it. Yeah, we had a professional musician called Stu 1138 who built the soundscape segments from scratch, and a lot of it was original content. It was amazing. Yeah. Sadie says, how does Midjourney come up with the new styles? Oh, well, I am glad you asked. It is fun to talk about that. Okay, here's how Midjourney comes up with the styles. One moment, please. I put my pencil down. No. Okay, remember this? This is all the rules for pixel patterns. This is how you get a style, right? You get a style by grabbing like some of this and some of this and some of this, some of that, and you piece them together. And, then you say, okay, well, that's style number 156261445 or whatever, right? So it has a little widget that throws random spots in there. It throws random bees, not bees. It's really not even bees. It throws random scoops in there, and it scoops out some embeddings from a bunch of different places and gives them a number. And I think it's in version 5.2, the widget, I think it did 27 orthogonal embeddings. I don't know how many there are in version 7 styles, but a certain number. So some unknown number. It's just grabbing things from here. That's why there's an infinite number of them, because there's an infinite number of spots in this cloud. See what Himbo said. Mind blown. Yeah, the potential. I don't know if it's controlled. Like, I don't know if they do like here, and then they do here, and then they do here, and then they do like this pattern, and then they do like, I don't know how controlled it is when they scoop the embeddings. I don't know how random it is. I don't know whether there's a widget that says this style makes like no sense at all. Let's not include it. Like, I have no idea. I can't speak to it. It's a black box. But, you think of them as billions, but it depends on how on your granularity. I mean, if we have a style, a style, and a style, and a style, a style, and a style, and a style, and that's how many styles is that? That's a lot of styles. And we also have all these styles, which is a lot of styles, and then we also have these styles, which is a lot of styles. But when you pull back far enough, then that's just like 3 styles. Right? We have that one and that one and that one as far as we're concerned. So what's happening is we have billions of them because, I can't even get this small enough to point at it. hold on. I can do it with wire, maybe. You know, we're counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 billions and billions and billions and billions and billions of styles, but a lot of them are really, 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 really similar. And so when you pull the camera back far enough, it's not going to feel like you have a billion styles. You're going to feel like you have, you know, I don't know how many, however many your eye discerns. So don't be overwhelmed by the fact that there's 4 billion of them or whatever. Because the human eye can't even discern the difference between some of them. Plus it can combine and sample from all of them, says Josh. Red, black, white is the same as red, white, black. Also true. Yeah. Okay. Douglas asks, can I add to a mood board? Here's how to add to a mood board. You go to your mood board tab and you find you want to add to, let's say you want to add to this mood board, you want to add more collage things to this mood board. What I like to do is put that mood board aside as a window like this, Ipsady watch. And then put the explore page as my other window like that. And then like I might type collage. And then like this is my collage effect. So then I get to find collages that I like this one has some cool ephemera. So I can just drag and drop it in there and it'll be added to the bottom, right? There it is. See right there? So I can just like scroll around, see what I like, throw it in the mood board like this. If you have the ability to have 2 windows open, then you can do this all day. It's kind of fun. And then to use the mood board, the first thing you do is go to your mood board and use this use in prompt button. That'll get you this really long, ugly string. So you can say, you know, puppies, whatever. But when you go to your create tab, you see it's now by a friendly name, mood board collage effect. And not only is it by a friendly name, but when I click it from here, it has a friendly code. So that now finally I have the friendly code to use. I don't know why it doesn't give you the friendly code right away.
You know why? The big long code never changes, but as you add to the mood board, the shorter code can change.
Aha, wisdom from Josh. I'll say that again. The friendly one like BWPX2QO, it changes each time you add something to the mood board, but the identity of the mood board is represented by that initial big long number. That's its ID and it never changes.
Yeah, I'd call it an M code. I don't know what the
An M code.
coders call it. 'Cause they always start with M.
It's the
mood
primary
software.
key.
Yep.
Is what it is, technically. Ipsady, why does Midjourney put a bird on everything? Do you see why I laugh? It's a great question. It feels like commentary on prompting skills. Like, oh, you didn't say anything about her other hand, so there's a bird on it now. I don't know. Is it your P code? Are you using personalization? I mean, the other thing is, remember, if I describe something really close to a cafe, it participates enough in cafe look, well, then Midjourney will presume it's a cafe and start putting vases of flowers and you know, cake and coffee and deli counters, and I'm just like, it's not a Midjourney. No, drop the cafe, man. It's not a cafe. But it's close enough, and that's because of the overlap in the cloud of meanings. Oh, hey, Josh, that's so cute. Poor Sadie. Okay, Austin Reginald, you're welcome so much for today, and thank you for all your participation. I will see you next time. We are officially out of time. Douglas, I'm so glad you learned how to use mood boards. I am going to end the YouTube stream and the Twitch stream and the Facebook stream. Thank you so much for dropping by. And remember, if you're watching this as a recording, all you got to do, if you have a question or a comment, is leave that question or comment in as your comment to this recording, and I will get back to you. All right. Bye-bye, streamers. The stream